Not all of us were 13-year-old girls in middle school, but by the time you finish watching the movie 8th grade, you'll definitely know how it feels for some people to go through the difficult transition from 8th grade to high school.
Real Screeners here. We are back to give you our real takes on movies. This time we are here to review 8th Grade, directed by Bo Burnham, who is known as a comedian and got his start on YouTube and also did some live stand-up comedy. This movie stars Elsie Fisher as Kayla and Josh Hamilton as her father Mark, and takes you through the trials and tribulations of growing up from those last 2 weeks in middle school, transitioning into high school. When I first saw the trailer for 8th Grade, I didn't know what to think of it. I thought the movie was targeted at a younger audience, but you know, this movie has had a lot of buzz around the festival circuit, Sundance for example. Right. It's been getting a lot of accolades, and it's being slowly released, but it's a smaller film, so of course it's going to take its time to be released in all cities. Of course, it's already had its release in major cities. This movie was a pleasant surprise.
Right. It's a smaller movie that packs a really good punch here, especially when you look at the fact that they had a cast of unknowns, just some young up-and-comers, and they do a really good job of putting everything together. A
lot of young actors, right? We had never heard of Elsie Fisher, who plays Kayla, the 13-year-old who is having just this hard time just finding a connection with the world around her, as a lot of teenagers do, right?
Right. It's a true coming-of-age story.
It's a really raw and authentic story, and it feels very real. Almost has like a documentary vibe to it at times. It
really does. When I think about this movie, I see a movie about a girl who's trying to find confidence to really show the world who she really is. But for whatever reason, and a lot of it for her is just her appearance, she feels like she doesn't look as good as some of the other girls. For whatever reason, she just struggles
with self-worth, right? Trying to find validation. She doesn't quite fit in with the status quo, you know, and she's just trying to find acceptance. And the movie does it really interestingly. Like, they basically show you these asides where she stares into the camera while she's filming her videos for her YouTube channel. She picks a different topic to talk about what a teenager needs in order to, you know, kind of like be successful.
Right, and it's super ironic because she's giving everyone all these life tips dealing with confidence
that she's struggling with herself.
Exactly. You know, so in a way, that's kind of her release. It's kind of the way that
it's kind of like her therapy in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which there's also some little interesting techniques where she kind of like keeps a notebook, right? She's very methodical about her planning, you know, these topics about.
It's a very pragmatic approach for sure.
Right, definitely, yeah.
And in keeping in line with technology, you know, you also see the internet as a kind of a way of escapism for this young lady. You know, she uses filters on Instagram to make herself look a little bit better. She goes through the internet to do most of her, you know, interpersonal communication.
Yeah, I think that the movie, besides being a commentary on the hardships of growing up, is also a commentary on social media and basically how social media can be a place where you can make a human connection, but you can also feel very lonely at times, you know?
Right.
And it's a place where you can be ridiculed. It's a place where, you know, it's a dangerous place. It can be or feel like a dangerous place.
Right,
you know?
And that's a nice segue into what I want to talk about too, as far as the plot is. There are certain things that kids are exposed to nowadays that we weren't exposed to, so they know more than we do. Okay, this is a movie that shows you that very starkly. It pulls no punches when it comes to, let's say, sexual content or strong language.
Yeah, I was surprised to find out this movie was rated R.
Yeah, I was like, really? Wow.
When I saw it, I was like, this has to be PG-13 at the most. But yeah, because of its sexual content, come to think of it, there is one scene that is kind of uncomfortable.
Very cringy.
Very cringy, which involves, you know, this girl and this boy that approaches her, right? Let's just leave it at that. But it definitely does not shy away from exploring some sexual content.
Right, and that's what makes this movie so real, so genuine, so engaging, is the fact that it really is a true, unfiltered take on how it is to be at that age.
At that age.
Although this movie opens up with talking a lot about Kayla, and obviously she's the central focus of the movie, I do like how they did a really good job of showing how adults have this disconnect with kids, especially at that age. Adults try to be cool, they try to be funny. There's a scene where this awkward video that they show middle school kids, she said, "It's going to be lit."
And adults don't even know how to react to that,
exactly,
or what to think of it. Yeah,
there's a part where this guy does a dab, and it's like, wow.
Yep, yeah.
Didn't pull it off, sorry.
Yeah, they do that very well, and they show you how it's difficult to be a parent, because you don't always understand what your kids are going through, because as a teenager, you're so, full of emotions, you're very fickle and like all over the place, and I think they show that very well. So speaking of the difficulties of being a parent, I thought that the performance by Josh Hamilton here was spot on as, a single father, which is kind of like something you don't really see a lot in movies. Usually they do the single mother. Some of my favorite scenes in the movie involved him with Kayla, played by Elsie Fisher. There's this one monologue towards the end of the movie that is just spot on. It's very emotional, very true. It resonated with me. It packed like an emotional punch, I guess. And it really speaks to the unconditional love that a parent can have for a child.
Right, and it also speaks to how parents are really good about, knowing the big picture and seeing a lot of the things that the kids don't, because a lot of times these kids just compartmentalize their world and they're just in their own little sphere.
Yeah, it actually reminded me a little bit of a movie that came out last year that received a bunch of nominations, Lady Bird, which was also another coming-of-age story with Saoirse Ronan. Very similar in tone and in a lot of the conflicts in the movie.
Yeah, and that last monologue you mentioned, I thought it was, very well written. Of course, Josh Hamilton pulled it off with his execution perfectly.
It really is the highest point of emotional resonance in the film.
So as you know, Beto, I'm really big on storytelling when it comes to showing and not telling. They always say that, and this movie does a fantastic job of doing that, because at the beginning, they show you her daily routine, they show you how awkward some 8th graders can be, and that really brings out their characterization, and in addition to that, the music, my goodness, really helps tell the story as well.
Yeah, the music is one of the most memorable devices in this movie, to be sure. The use of like electronic music and synthesizers.
Very kind of 80s sounding,
very, very loud music. I mean, it's almost like...
It reminds me of The Breakfast Club.
Yeah, like 80s movies, but it definitely was used to kind of like match the feelings that this girl was experiencing, Because the music...
you feel it, not just because it's loud either.
It's just so erratic and so crazy and loud. It matches her conflicts, her desperation.
Right, exactly. Like the pitch and the frequency of the bass, the beats, everything goes exactly. It is Anna Meredith, by the way, is the composer for this music. It's her first soundtrack, and she blew it out the water with this.
Yeah, and it really brings the movie together as a cohesive, story.
As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I was never a 13-year-old girl in middle school, so I kind of couldn't relate. I could not relate to this girl very well. But there were some aspects in the movie, some situations she was in where I did encounter that, and so I completely empathized with her situation. That all into account, I will give this movie 4 reels out of 5.
Okay, and I think that that's what makes this movie a good movie, is that even though you wouldn't imagine that you could put yourself in a 13-year-old girl's shoes, there are certain universal themes in this movie that you can certainly empathize and relate to.
Right.
But what it comes down to is the way that this movie is crafted, the way that they use the music, the acting from a cast of kids that really are not very well known. This new director kind of giving you this fresh perspective on coming of age. I can't recall a coming of age movie that takes place at a in those early adolescent years. A lot of coming of age stories take place in high school and beyond. And for all of those reasons, I thought it was a very fresh, perspective and approach. And I'm going to give this movie 4.5 reels reels out of 5.
That's been our trend lately, right?
That's
the last
been our
3
trend
movies.
lately. I think that I really have no complaints about this movie. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I was thoroughly entertained by it. I was moved by it.
And it's funner than you might think, actually.
Yeah, it's a good time at the movies.
Yeah. Well, that does it for our review of the movie 8th Grade, which we both agree is a strong entry this year. And as always, we'd like to plug our Stardust. So I am LJ5625.
And I'm betocukoo. And always, please remember to give us your thoughts on the comments below. We want you to tell us what you think about 8th grade. Do you think this is a fresh perspective on coming of age? Please subscribe to our channel if you like our videos and click on that bell.
That's right. We'll see you guys later.
Hello, real screeners.
Sorry, I wasn't ready. Okay.
Real screeners here to give you real takes on movies. Blah, 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 blah.
As always, I'd like to plug our stars. Okay.